That's good, right? Do you, instead of they would say, do you want a bag? They now ask, do you want a bag?
Oh, nice. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Somebody said, you know, because they have this buyers consortium and that has stuff. So he said, yeah, how'd you do that?
Victoria's.
We're in the regular meeting now, Gib.
Yeah, we're about to go live.
Well, see if you know,
Jesse will be back in a second.
doing the job, doing a tour of BC, and just around for.
Colin was running off to Slocan tonight.
Yeah.
That's what he was talking about. Then
We tried to ask about it.
he was talking
We
about
got stuck on kind of. Yeah, but there was the concern about. We don't want to spread it. They're bringing in one part.
I think on the other one.
No, I got in about 6 last night. Yeah. We had in Toronto. Got invited on a boat. I was like,
Well, the choice out of you.
Yeah.
On Lake Ontario?
yeah. I got there and I went to my friend's but like someone else was going away.
How are you checking in on the game? You got this shot.
Hi.
Yeah, like, I'll come over here and ask you really important questions.
Come back, Jesse.
The game started at
Applebee's and
You guys ready?
we used oh, and the Raptors game too. It's fun.
And let's see if we can get out of here in a timely fashion.
What's our goal?
What's our goal?
Okay, Rick. Okay.
Keith,
You're watching.
tell the rules.
You only need to watch the last 5 minutes. Anyway.
Mine's keep the rules.
What time did it start at? 6?
It is.
Victoria, watch it.
But tell these two.
Yeah, I got it recorded.
Don't tell me, 'cause I want to watch it later.
Are you? It might start.
Okay, Rick.
Okay, John, Mayor, we're streaming.
Okay, folks, I know you're having lots of fun out there, but we have to get going here. Thanks very much, and welcome everybody. We appreciate you coming tonight, and we have a number of our staff here and in the audience as well. So it's nice to see people come out, and it's great to see people out here that are happy too, because that doesn't always happen. Believe me. All right, so I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'd like to start off by with the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the land to which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Kootenay, the Silex, and the Sinixt peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour their connection to the land, rivers, and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like to know if there are any late items, first of all. And if not, then I'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Page, Councillor Woodward, questions or comments? All in favour? Thanks very much. Carried. And now we're going to have adoption of the minutes from the previous meetings, and that's on April the 8th, 2019. Special meeting of April 29th, 2019. And the special meeting May the 6th, 2019, May the 10th, 2019, regular council meeting on May the 6th, 2019, and the special meeting May the 27th, 2019. So hopefully everybody's gone through those, and we can get a motion to accept that list.
Yes.
Councillor Anderson, you're okay? You're moving. Seconder, Councillor Page, thank you very much. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Good. Onward and upward. Now, so we have recommendations from the committee of the whole, and we move on to number 7, which is up first is the Nelson District Arts Council and a funding request. Is there anybody here?
No, it's not a presentation.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure who all was here. But I have to say, when I seen you, when I was talking to you today in the hallway there, ever since Mamma Mia, when I see one of the casts on the street, I'm going, Mamma Mia. Here it's like a plague. Yeah, it was amazing. You did a marvelous job of putting that together. It was just it was a real proud moment for the whole community, and honest to God, it's like we just went up a whole other rung on the ladder, didn't we? It was amazing. Yeah, thank you for all your work. It goes unrewarded many a time, but that was a fantastic. Thank you.
Those standing ovations.
Yeah.
It's lucky
All right,
to be rewarded tonight.
And here we are on to another project, right? So the Nelson District Arts Council hosted the Nelson International Mural Festival in 2018, and will be hosting it again in 2019. The Nelson District Arts Council hopes to continue this initiative in 2020 and is requesting funding from the city earlier than it has in the past years because it's applying for a Canada Council grant in August. The application to the Canada Council grant is strengthened if the application has secured funding through local government, and the Nelson District Arts Council is requesting that Council contribute $25,000 to the 2020 Nelson International Mural Festival. And I know that Council has gone through this preamble and the supporting information, which is fabulous, and there is a recommendation here and several options for that. But the recommendation is that the City of Nelson provides a grant of $25,000 to the Nelson District Arts Council for the purpose of holding a Mural Fest in 2020 with the funding to be provided through the Downtown Reserve.
I'll move that motion.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, a second.
Go ahead.
Councillor Renwick. Any questions or comments from the mover?
Yeah, so I think that 2 years ago, or I guess it would be 3 years ago now, when the Nelson District Arts Council came to the previous council, we in part made a commitment for 3 years. And of course, you can't tie future councils to 3 years, but I'm still here.
Totally.
And so I just want to say that I'm very happy to move this, and I'm glad to see you guys have done a remarkable job in being able to raise additional money and matching funds. And I'm sure my they're not new anymore, colleagues around the council table would be very happy to support this $25,000 for the 2020 year.
Councillor Renwick, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll echo those sentiments, and I was honored to be part of the jury selection last year in the inaugural, and fantastic work, and yeah, more than happy to help you out.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? You can go home now.
You guys, thank you.
You're welcome.
There'll be 10 new murals this year. Yay, exciting.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Sydney.
Sydney.
And if you really want to see the room clear out, here we go. The Nelson Cannabis Collective letter of support.
I need to recuse myself.
Okay. Thank you.
Please
All right.
record.
The Nelson Cannabis Collective has requested that the city provide a letter of support with regard to local cannabis cultivation. Additional local community members have recently expressed that they would like the city to do more to support the local cannabis industry. And there is a recommendation here, and there's one word we can insert in this, Kevin, we talked about this earlier, that the City of Nelson provide a letter of support to the Nelson Cannabis Collective, indicating that it supports the legal cultivation of cannabis within city limits. Moved by Councillor Lockenberg, second by Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? Councillor Morrison.
I've read the letter here, and I'm fine with the letter. I just want to caution that it seems to me that we don't often, as a city, take a position in regards to business.
Yeah.
I think businesses need to manage on their own, and I think that we've been more than gracious in our support of cannabis, at least at their retail front. I realize that there's the potential in the future that there could be some requests going forward, I guess, to Health Canada to legalize a small operation here within the city of Nelson. And I just need to voice my concern that I've not, in my years on council, seen this where we've written a letter supporting a particular type of business. And so I'm going to be voting no. I mean, this will pass without my vote. But yeah, it's something that I don't want to see the city making a habit of going down the road of in terms of promoting businesses. I think people have to succeed or not succeed on their own
I just want to
grounds.
clarify before we get into debate on this. So in this case, because right now in our zoning, cultivation of cannabis isn't allowed, I think, and we did that because we wanted to control the zoning of where that would be, not because we wouldn't support cannabis cultivation within the city limits. So that's why it's this blanket no, and you have to get a rezone to do that. So we're not supporting any particular, this isn't meant to support a particular business. This is meant to just say that council's open to considering a rezone for someone that wants to do cultivation of cannabis. We were very specific with these folks to say a particular property or you're bringing forward that will stand on its own. This in no way says that this council supports your particular location or for that matter your particular business that will be dealt with in the zoning. And as you know, council has to keep an open mind on zoning to hear from all parties whether you feel that particular zone is appropriate for this business or not this business, and that's the only reason, just because it's not in our zoning now, and you know, whether it's this business or others that want to look at potential cultivation in the city, then it would be open to others.
If I may.
Go ahead.
So, and I just need to make it clear, I'm not against cultivation of marijuana, but I think the regional district is the better area for production. Thank you.
Councillor Page, and then Councillor Lockenberg.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, and I guess this question is towards staff. I think my understanding of this particular, what this group is asking for is the development of a building that would have multi-tenant capabilities to,
Again, this isn't about
No, it's
their
not about-
particular
but that we would support that.
proposal.
So we had Anna in here last week at the Cow presenting that we should consider allowing it within the industrial zoning. Could we not set up something where we still had a notice of development and people would still come and we could talk about particular things, but send out the message that we would allow these kinds of facilities in the city and that there would be a process instead of them having to come to us? Because I think this is exactly what she was speaking to is.
Right now, we have no zoning for that. If council wants us to consider a appropriate zone, I think Nelson is a bit challenged in that way. We don't have a particularly
Large land.
industrial area like other communities. And if you look at the downtown waterfront plan, for example, it encourages multi-family in some of these areas that we have light industrial, and certainly sees other lands being developed. So we're, you know, I think it is appropriate at this stage because of the concerns around smell and other things that you'd probably want to do spot zonings, but that's up to council to you want that on our long list or maybe short list of things that you want your development services staff to look into. At this stage, we're not overwhelmed by these applications. It's an arduous process to even get to first base with these businesses, and before we went and zoned a whole area for that use, you might wanna see what, walk before you run.
Do it to ban theirs.
What? All right, sorry.
I would speak in favor of this motion, and one of the reasons why I think that we should be considering cultivation within the city limits is because we don't know yet how cultivation is going to evolve, whether technologically or in terms of practice. And some of the ideas that I've heard and just even considered myself is once we get, let's say, a couple of years out and cannabis cultivation becomes more developed, we may see like a research center. We could see like a historical center that combines like a little bit of cultivation plus like an interpretive kind of center that, depending on how Nelson's brand evolves, especially as we focus more on craft economies, that just like we have craft brewery in town where they're sort of really cultivating the product in town, you could imagine somebody doing that as an adjunct to, another type of business. So by limiting it, I think we hamstring future businesses as they continue to explore and evolve what could happen. And it'd be a shame to do that, because this might be just exactly the type of business you want in the city as opposed to out in the RDCK, because it can be something more than we maybe yet imagine when we think of cannabis cultivation. So.
Okay, so before you speak, Councillor Woodward, we're talking about a letter of support here.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not designing the bylaws.
No.
No,
Okay.
just preserving the opportunity for innovation.
I just want to, just add on to what Councillor Lockenberg is saying, and that, we've done very well developing a craft brewery business here, and it's an important part of our town. And I think, it seems like we are hand-holding a little bit for this particular industry, but it's coming out of prohibition, and this is a really delicate time for this industry. And I think still, it's a little bit of help getting it up on its feet. And I think as we go forward, it could be an excellent micro industry within Nelson. And, it's been in this part of the world for a long time, and it's just becoming above board. And I think it's important we support it. And it could be, like Councillor Lockenberg is saying, an excellent future employer and revenue generator for our city. So thank you.
Thank you. So on that note, we have a mover and a seconder. And I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay, there's one here. Okay, Kootenay Lake Tourism and the,
We just wait for Brittany.
We have Brittany coming back, and
sorry, Councillor Anderson.
Your worship, I would wish to declare at this time that I am not entitled to participate in the discussion on the vote for the next item of business before this meeting. That is an item on the agenda by reason of perceived conflict of interest.
Thank you. Okay, so in 2009.
Sorry, I'm going to.
You're leaving too?
Well, I have to pay this tax, so I can't be here.
That's true.
Did I ever fix your iPhone? Maybe I should.
Anybody else want to leave? Don't take it personally, Diana. All right, so in 2009, Council approved the implementation of a 2% hotel room tax to provide assistance to Nelson Kootenay Lake Tourism Society for the purpose of promoting tourism within the region. And that's important to remember. So your geographical area is not just Nelson, it's up Kootenay Lake as well, right? So, it is a requirement of the Ministry of Jobs, Tourism and Skills Training that participating municipalities and regional districts renew their MRDT every 5 years. In order to continue the program, Kootenay Lake Tourism must submit their renewed application by the end of August 2019. And the renewal application must include a resolution of council indicating their continued support for the tax. This year, Kootenay Lake Tourism is also applying to add Area A to the region, which is in support of joining the Destination Marketing Organization known as the DMO. And of course, Council, there's always options on alternatives, but the recommendation at the moment is that the City of Nelson endorse the continuation of the 2% additional hotel room tax within the municipal boundaries to provide assistance to the Nelson Kootenay Lake Tourism Society for the purpose of external destination marketing for the promotion of tourism within the boundaries of the City of Nelson, Village of Caslow, electoral area, A, D, E, and F.
Moved.
Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Page. Any questions or comments from the few of you that are left? Councillor Page and then Councillor Woodward.
No.
So I'm seeing that one of the changes, if I'm reading it correctly, for the MRDTs is that affordable housing is now a permissible use of the funds. Do we have to give direction to the Nelson Kootenay Lake Tourism, or how do we go about?
I would say we looked at this in the past, and the amount of money they collect and what would go to affordable housing is insignificant. So I think that's, I think ultimately council can, I don't know if you can make that a condition. We do not have a vote. We don't sit on their board. That's all legislative of who manages that. That's certainly an option. I don't know if council has the right to say you must. I think the intent of that was really when those communities where they were really challenged with trying to house their own employees for their industry, it opened up that as an avenue for them. So I don't think it was meant for councils to start requiring that of their association, but it did give them the right to direct some of those funds if they were being challenged by trying to house their employees. So I'd suggest that probably the best route would be, if that's an interest, and have that discussion with them and see what their appetite is or what their challenges around that. I think we're hearing mixed things. I'm certainly hearing from them, from the broader local businesses, that housing is a challenge for their employees. But we heard from Councillor Morrison that when she was the chamber rep, that they seemed to say that wasn't the case. So, so I think you would engage at this stage to hold this up because of that. I think would be probably not great timing.
So I think in closing on that, the letter of support is critical to move that forward now, but it doesn't necessarily hinge on us having that conversation around direction of a portion of the funds towards affordable housing. Would that work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'm just bringing it up because it's a conversation I think we should.
Yeah, I think
should be had.
I think you certainly could go meet with their board and ask them where housing fits in their sort of broader scheme of things.
Because I know Ainsworth went down on their own and built
Yep, sure.
their own
Yeah.
housing complex for their employees because they were having that challenge.
Well, then, as a supplemental, I wonder if in our letter of support we want to say up to 3%, as opposed to 2, to free up some opportunity to do something more with that. Because if we say 2, we're not coming back for this for 5 years.
What would that number look like in the whole scheme of things?
Couldn't hear you, Keith, sorry.
Well, I'm just wondering if our letter of support should say up to 3%, which is the maximum that's allowed anyway. To see.
The 3%, we did a survey to all of, We actually put out a survey to all the accommodators in the area asking if they wanted to move to 3%, and it was a unanimous no. We are staying at 2%, and that is the voice of the accommodators that get to make that decision.
Right.
Yeah, so we are staying at 2%. Most DMOs are moving to 3%, but that's that community's decision. But
Okay.
yeah, our key stakeholders are the accommodators, just so everyone's aware.
Yeah, without them, we wouldn't have had this in the first place.
Exactly.
They
Yeah.
had to vote to have it. So, but maybe that's something, without it being on this page, if it's okay with you, Councillor Page, that you could have that conversation going forward and
Absolutely,
see
yep.
within that budget if there is some opportunity to. It may not be to build housing as such, but it may be able maybe to bring awareness to the issue and see how other providers could probably step into that fray to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, welcome you at the table. I can put you on the agenda in the near future.
Councillor Woodward.
Along the same lines, I was when I read my agenda package here, I was thinking about the carbon footprint of tourism, and you know, I think it's considering that the time we're in now, and I feel like it should be considered that you know, we depend on tourism here, of course, but there is a carbon expense to that. People getting here, people going home. So I just had the idea of, you know, could some of these funds be used for carbon offsetting, or could some of these funds be used to somehow plant some trees or do something along the line, because tourism is carbon heavy, but we all depend on it. So trying to find some kind of a way of lessening that impact.
No, it's a good idea. Currently, we are mandated by the government to spend our money on marketing outside of our region. So I think you can put a bigger proposal forward to Destination BC and the government of BC and request that some of the funding be allocated for sustainability concerns like that. So yeah, definitely a topic to be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Round up the gang, please.
So while you're in pod, it's 6256.
Oh, you're not supposed to tell anybody.
Anyway, who's leading?
Oh, it's the game shift fluctuates so much.
Who's leading?
It's halftime.
It's the
They
first
are.
half over.
They are.
And the first
Bad
half.
guys? Oh, that's
6
a close-
points.
That's close, yeah.
That's nothing.
Halftime.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Thanks, Diana. See ya.
Thank you.
Sorry. Good thing I got people left in the room to vote.
I know. There he is.
Never quite too sure what happens if there's only like 2 people left in the room.
Okay, next one up, folks, is the Nelson District Youth Center. Nelson District Youth Center, that's the one that's up now.
Okay, thanks.
The Nelson District Youth Center has requested that the city provide a letter of support with regards to its Makerspace project and its grant application to the Columbia Basin Trust. The Nelson District Youth Center grant application to CBT is seeking over $100,000 in order to qualify for the grant. The Nelson District Youth Center must also receive funding in kind support from the city. The city has committed to providing a portion of the funding to the Market Space project. And there is a recommendation that the City of Nelson send a letter to the Columbia Basin Program Grant Committee supporting the Nelson District Youth Center Market Space project.
Makerspace.
Makerspace, sorry.
Yeah.
Anybody interested in putting that forward? Councillor Page and Councillor Renwick? No, questions or comments, please.
Just for information in terms, so the library project is going forward, so the CBT program basically said that I think each community would be eligible for at least one, and larger ones like us could be eligible for more than one of these. It's really a digital equality project around making sure that everyone has access to the digital tools that are out there, and library, it has to be public access. The library is clearly public access. The youth center is public access. The vision for this is really to build on what the tech club initially started and expand that and really make it a core function of the youth center as an activity that youth would attend the youth center for.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure, so it's considered complementary to what's provided at the library, and it's not,
It's not competing.
okay,
They're clarified that Nelson could be eligible for two, and,
Okay.
and this is the second one. Yeah.
perfect, sounds great, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried, thanks very much.
Any of you haven't been to the youth center lately? There's lots of activity going there. They're building this new skate park with bouldering wall, and it's going to be
gonna be great.
super cool.
It's gonna be great.
Good.
I was in there the other day.
Yeah, and the youth camps or the kids camps are filling up and are so it's real positive things happening at the youth center.
Excellent. Good. Okay, development variance permit application for 1202 McCrory Avenue. Development Services has received an application to vary the zoning bylaw number 3199 to in 2013 for the construction of addition to an existing single-family dwelling. The variance requires to reduce the exterior side lot setback from 1.5 meters to 0.6 meters. And there's a full report from staff, and there's also a recommendation, and you have several options ahead of that, should you wish to use them. But the recommendation is that the application for the development variance permit to vary the requirements zoning bylaw 3199 2013 to allow for the construction of addition on the subject property be approved for Lot B Plan NEP 63289, District Lot 304, Land District 26, 1202 McCrory Avenue as follows. To reduce the exterior side lot setback from 1.5 to 0.6 meters. Mover and a seconder, okay, Councillor Page, seconder, Councillor Lochtenberg. Questions or comments?
Maybe I'll just give a bit more information because you can see there is a city right of way.
Through the middle of the property, it's on your first photo there.
Yeah, you can see there's a city right of way. So I did inquire whether that's developable. It seems like it's unlikely because we have services going through there, and it's a sanitary service, and it's to make the grades. It actually picks up all those houses, I think, whatever direction that is, below the picture, that direction. So we did look at, would this variance impact potential development? Oh, there's Sebastian.
Oh, there we go.
Hey.
I was scrolling through the pictures here.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the existing house, that's their. This addition is not gonna further encroach on city lands. It's going to be a little closer to the setback. So, given the existing site conditions, this small addition will not cause any issues. Even if we were to try to find a way to subdivide that lot and redevelop it, which is, as Kevin mentioned, is unlikely in the future. But yeah, so that was verified, and even from a code perspective, everything's good.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, then Councillor Morris.
Yeah, so I
Hand up ahead.
I don't disagree with this in principle at all. I just noticed on the last page, and this is sort of developments in terms of we're trying to make sure that properties are as fire smart as possible. And I know with new builds, we're requiring, we're going to be likely requiring, that the materials are non-combustible. And I do see that there's a fire, like a wood storage unit right in the wall, the external wall of this. And I was just concerned about that being a fire hazard, and if this was something that was a part of the design, and if that was anything that we had any say over, in terms of the sauna. I think that's great. That just concerns me from a fire smart perspective.
It's something that we'll look at at building permitting.
Okay.
But from what is shown on the elevation and what is shown on the actual floor plan, it's not quite the same. So it might just be more so of an elevation drawing, conceptual thing. But yeah, definitely something we'll look at.
Thank you.
Keeping the fire chief on his toes, Irene.
Yeah.
So sorry, I had two questions, so that was the same question I had, and then my second question is, could you please define for me, seeing as how this and the next development variance permit refers to encroachment agreements, and what that means for the city, and what that means for the property owner, and for the future sale of that property? I don't understand what an encroachment agreement is.
Okay. Many homes in Nelson are actually located on city lands. Back in the days, they didn't have the same tools that we have now in terms of locating. And sometimes subdividing the lands came after the house was already there. So so essentially the encroachment agreement is to recognize that the property or there's part of the building encroaching on our lands, and essentially it's more of a liability thing. So it's ensuring that the city is added as an additional insured party should there be anything related to liabilities. So essentially it's a contract between the private owner and the city to, one, show where the encroachment is, and two, ensure that the city is added as an insured party.
Secondary, so you're saying to me that this agreement goes on the title?
Correct.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Again, you might as well sit where you are, I guess, Sebastian, right? Okay, the next item on the agenda is an application, a permit application of 104 Douglas Road to reduce the side yard setback. And Development Services has received an application for the construction of a new deck and stairs, which triggered a variance, zoning bylaw 3199/2013, to reduce the exterior and lot setback from 1.5 to 0.3 meters. And there is a recommendation from our staff and that the application for the development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a deck on the subject property be approved for Lot 1, Block 6, Plan NEP 284B, District Lot 96, Lot District 26, except Plan NEP 20828 104 Douglas Road as follows: to reduce the exterior lot setback from 1.5 meters to 0.3. Councillor Renwick, seconder. Councillor Anderson, questions? Any questions? Sebastian? Everybody okay?
No, I have. No, it was about snow plowing. It's okay.
You
It'll be
okay?
It'll just fall in his yard.
Hearing no further questions, all in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Sebastian.
Thanks,
for your help.
Sebastian.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Sebastian.
Okay. Next is the Eco Society's downtown market.
I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Revolving door here tonight. Anybody else want to?
Good, I would.
I would like to as well, but I won't.
Yeah. Good, I would, but.
Okay, thanks. On March the 25th, 2019, a committee of the whole meeting, the Eco Society asked the city for a permission to relocate the downtown market from its current location on the 400 and 500 block of Hall Street, the 500 block of Hall Street, to the 600 block of Baker Street and the plaza. So that will be turning around the corner, potentially. The Eco Society has solicited feedback from business owners, and a meeting with the Eco Society, the key department heads, was held. Based on the fact that the majority of businesses surveyed supported the move to the 600 block Baker Street and the improved safety, staff indicated that it would approve the Eco Society's request. It later came to light that some Baker Street business owners were opposed to the proposed relocation and had questions about the process. Staff directed the Eco Society to solicit additional feedback from business owners and to provide documentation. The information has now been received for consideration. Additionally, on June the 7th, staff and the mayor met with the Baker Street business owners that opposed the relocation to hear their concerns. Staff is now seeking direction from council on the proposed relocation in advance of the downtown market season. The Eco Society plans to run the downtown market on Wednesdays from June the 12th to September the 25th from 8:30 to 4:30, which includes setup and takedown. And Councillor Renwick was at that meeting with me also, and there was quite a number of people showed up expressing their concern about the market. So there's an extensive report here from staff regarding the pros and cons and the feedback that we received. And there is a recommendation at the end of the page if you wish to move it. Somebody wish to move the recommendation or not. There are options and alternatives. You can approve the location of the market, or you can deny it or leave the market where it is. Or refer it back to staff if you wish. Councillor Lochtenberg.
I'd like to refer it back to staff.
You're making a motion.
I'd like to move to refer it back to staff. I understand that there
So
has.
just a second, we need a seconder.
Well, we have to know what the motion is first before we can second it.
Refer
right?
it back to staff.
Nobody's giving direction.
I'd like to refer it back to staff to, I understand that, I know that there's a preamble here. So
Okay.
I'm giving the preamble as, with the hope that staff will step in and correct me if I'm. Oh,
Microphone.
thanks.
Is it hard to hear out there? It is, eh?
Right. Oh, because the van. I move to refer it back to staff with the question, though, before I make this motion. The first market's in 2 days?
We've told them that that's not going to happen in 2 days. Will be delayed a week at this stage if, even if council approves it tonight, I believe.
Council approves it. Okay. Okay. With that being said, if we do refer back to staff, or even if we approve it, does that mean that they have approval to go ahead with the old location at the 400?
We're looking for, you're going to have to approve one or the other.
Oh, I see. Okay, so then maybe I'll adjust it then. Thank you for that. So I move that we leave the market at its 2018 location for this week. Well, I guess for the month, until we have a chance to come back. And at the same time, refer it to staff to explore the option of moving it to the 400, back to the 400 block of Baker Street. Does that make sense?
Rick, I would just, or Councilor Lochtenberg, I would just point out to you that Eco Society indicated to staff that they would rather not have to switch locations midway through the summer. They would rather hold off and have a permanent location from their logistical perspective.
Okay.
They did indicate that to us, so I just wanted you to know that. That's not in the report.
Okay, so I'm trying to get to a motion that we can debate. So, without, so I'll stick then with leave the market at its 2018 location, and then we can debate that and vote it down or discuss.
So you need a seconder to have that conversation. Oh. Councillor Anderson, second to leave the market at its original location.
Well, I think the resolutions that the Eco Society be provided with the 400 and 500 block of Hall Street as the location for the 2019 downtown Wednesday market. So our number 2 here.
So that'll be leaving
Is that
it
it?
where it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So number 2 then.
Number 2.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. So if you want to come back on board, go ahead.
Yeah. So I've been polling residents and businesses, and I think there's just an overwhelming enthusiasm for returning it to its original location at the 400 block of Baker Street. It was great, and it also had the added advantage of not interrupting or affecting transit the way this new, which feels to me like a compromise. And to hear the response from local businesses on the west side of the block, it feels like there's a west-east sort of conflict there, which I think that's just the fact that we've got something that's, and Mountain Hound Inn, it also makes sense that an inn is a different type of business than a retail or restaurant, and I think we should consider their concerns more than we would have like a restaurant or a sort of more or locally focused business. So my goal is not, I really think that this market is amazing, and I think what we've got from the Eco Society, what they've done has been fantastic. I'm excited about the new market manager, but I think for it to really thrive, it should be back at its original location on Baker Street. So with that goal in mind, I think it's best to keep it at its current location so we can facilitate its eventual move.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, do you want to fill in any gaps there?
Yeah, so to be honest, I felt really conflicted about this. I did see the huge concerns in terms of pedestrians and traffic and that intersection. I thought that, when I was down there, it felt dangerous for me. I couldn't imagine being a parent down there with kids. As a driver, it was a nightmare to get through. Like, it didn't matter who you were. That was an unsafe intersection, you know. And then we have these businesses that are, you know, there's several businesses, and I've also been talking to business owners that were at the previous location, and, you know, they were telling me there was mixed reviews. Some of them thought that it was good for their business. Others of them thought that it was bad for their business. You know, we're hearing people that haven't had it in front of their business before, but have experienced it in close proximity, that they're really concerned about their revenues. And we know that this is one of their very prime revenue seasons. Personally, I loved it in its old location on Baker Street. But I also thought one of the things that did come up in this whole process so far was that people wanted to see the vendors face the stores. And I think that that's a really good thing, that if anything has come out of this, you know, it's a little bit awkward to me as I was walking around, that you're going sort of in the middle, and there was a few things that kind of you could access from both points, but, you know, really having them, so instead of sort of this hallway down the middle of the street, but you're lining both sides, so hopefully it brings you into businesses as well as into market stalls. I think that would be preferable. You know, ideally we would have started this. I know Eco Society did come to us earlier, and it would have been nice, you know, if this process would have been done a little bit differently, but it wasn't. We're in a situation now where we're literally stalling the market, you know, and that is also impacting other local businesses, you know, that rely on these few markets throughout the summer. So, you know, I think that if we want to keep it where it is this year, you know, and I know they were really working on it, huge concern with traffic and safety. But next year, like, we need to be knowing in February what's going to be happening, where those vendors are going to go. You know, and I think that we'll be ready to start this process a lot earlier. So, you know, I'm willing to support the motion that you put on the table. But you know, this, I would say that this is also something that we should just consider for this year, and we really need to figure out a solution, you know. And I know that there was pros to having it there. There's the bathrooms, there's access to water, we have the stage, you know, so there's going to have to be a lot more that goes into this.
Thank you very much. Further questions?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm torn on this one too, because everybody loves the market. It just seems like, and I think, and I could be wrong, but it seems like the 400 block did embrace the market. And I certainly understand why the city would like it on the Hall Street Plaza, because of the facilities, the power, what have you, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, having been at the meeting on the 7th, and there was some serious pushback from the business owners on the 600 block, and fair enough. That is their, you know, that's their right, and it's their business. And to refer it back to the original location on Hall Street for another year, and to do some more surveying of all of Baker Street, which I think we discussed, would be a recommendation. I did get a phone call late this morning from the manager of the Adventure Hotel, and he is very concerned. And my only caveat to this would be, if it's at all possible, that we could give him access to his parking lot, that quarter of a block on the one side of the street, just for people checking in. He knows that you know, the city did their best last year to help him out with that situation, with the giving him parking meters in front, but still to direct somebody to have to drive 3 or 4 blocks out of their way to get to their parking lot and then down an alley, they found it very challenging. So if we could, just as a consideration to the Adventure Hotel, that, you know, they're a big taxpayer as well, if we could make that work for them, that would be great. And again, everybody loves the market. We all love the market. We just have to make this work a little bit smoother, that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Page.
I know this is a really tough one, and I'm speaking in opposition to this motion. There's a list of people who would like this on the 600 block, and a list of people that would not like this on the 600 block. There is the traffic concerns going up and down 500 of Hall and 400 of Hall. And within keeping it on Hall as is the motion in front of us right now, we have multiple locations that are going to be intersecting with traffic from the alley to the intersection. We have, for the market itself, if they're all in the center, we have one side of the street near the end of it that has no active tenants in it, except, well, Sushi Wood has finally gone in, so we've got something at the end there. On the other side, we have a parking lot, and then we have a face of PharmaSave that doesn't have any businesses within it. And the whole thing that I think makes it work on the 400 Baker is that center column that we used to do, faced out to the businesses to create traffic all around that sidewalk walkability. I think we can achieve that same thing on that compromise, that L shape of Hall to 600 block, and I think we should see it go through as a pilot on that and see where we're at for a year. And I know it's tough. As a business owner, I would find it tough too to have to weather those uncertainties of trying to figure out how to market to that audience on that day. But I think some businesses will really flourish and figure that out, and some businesses might need a little bit of help to figure that out. But I think it's an opportunity for those businesses for the most part. And I think that street with the shade and the non-exposure, like it was beaten hot down on 400 block, and it would be a much more pleasant experience for everybody. The participants of the market, if we got it back on, is at least try it on 600 block and see how Hall and 600 works. So I mean, I'm opposed of leaving it just on Hall. We tried Hall. We know we don't like Hall.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question.
Can I just ask for clarification? I'm just want to know if it's all of the 400 block or it's 3/4 of the 400 block, what council's voting for here.
Well, I think Councillor Renwick mentioned that he was asking staff to work with the market to try and accommodate the Adventure Hotel.
That was my ask rather than amend the motion.
Yeah.
If that's possible.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not a hard, it has to be. It's because I think you're losing vendors by being on the 400 block versus the 600 Baker Street. If you look at their vendor plan there. And if you further restrict 400, you're going to lose more vendors. Last year, we did talk to the market about, or the Adventure about maybe their parking lot could be that, and you could free up parking elsewhere, but they didn't want to do that either. Everyone knows we basically did a swap. They lost some parking within their parking lot, so they could exit out the laneway. We gave them the same amount of parking. In fact, I think more in front of their hotel at on Vernon Street. And I know that's one day of the 7 days they're in business, and might be a bit confusing for their patrons. I think, in terms of the Mountain Hound, you got the Adventure that's got this similar type of challenge as the Mountain Hound does. I did refer Mountain Hound to our planner on the parking side because they're not supposed to be using our street as ongoing parking, and I think there's some options around finding parking that's not on Baker Street. It's meant to turn around for patrons.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. But I think what Councillor Renwick's asking is that should the motion go through, is retain the market on the site that currently exists, as Councillor Lockenberg put forward, that we would work with the Adventure to figure out their parking. Councillor
Morrison?
I was just gonna say, do you need to see my name?
we're looking at me there.
Yeah, no, sorry. So just a couple things that just come when I listen to the discussion. So there's a few things in my mind, and I know this is going back a ways, and one was I'm still Councillor Anderson earlier was nice enough to suggest why it's not there, but I'm always been curious as to why we don't have the Wednesday market at Cottonwood Park. And she told me it was because it was allowed people that work downtown to access the market, and perhaps that's the reason. But we've spent a lot of time in the development of Cottonwood Park. We've got power there, we've got washrooms there, we've got water there, and many cities that have twice a week markets hold them in the same spot twice a week. So I'm wondering, is it that bad? And also in terms of space, if there's more vendors, which I hear every year when the Eco Society comes to present, that it seems to me that there is more space down there even to accommodate more people that would like to come to the market. So that's one question that I just never have really felt that I've had fully answered. And the other one was one that we brought up last year when we debated the movement of the market. And that was to trial it on Victoria Street because it's a less vehicular traffic road to a certain extent. And at that time, it was because we were taking a serious look at moving the bus depot, the transit. And that hasn't happened in our going into this year in terms of doing the financial plan and looking at things. We didn't have that flagged as a high priority activity. So I would see that there's the potential that Victoria Street could be available for the market. And I think, and as although those people might say, well, there's nothing happening up there, I think that draws traffic, and there's quite a bit of stuff going on in our alleyways too that often people forget. And I think that if we can draw people up and around, I think that's good for other businesses besides Baker Street businesses. Like I say, there's businesses in the alley. We've got all of our beautiful artwork in the alley, and then to go up onto Victoria. And the other thing is that as much as I sympathize with the Adventure Inn, if we think we've got traffic chaos happening now, if we run the market across Hall Street on Baker, now allowing people to cross that Vernon Street intersection and drive 3 car lengths to turn into a parking lot, that I would see as, personally, having been sort of in this kind of business and traffic for years before I was ever on city council, that to me is a much more dangerous proposition to allow them to have their driveway open during the market than it is the fact that there was lots of signage and stuff, and that there's crosswalks there all the time that cross Baker Street every other day of the week besides Wednesday. That I see that as much more of a risk in terms of people going to the market. So I sympathize with the Adventure Inn, but I think we made the best compromise last year. Is it convenient? Not particularly, but I think traffic-wise, it's the safest decision to make.
Thank you. So we got to be careful we're not debating what could be here
Yeah.
around how we're going to redesign the market, and let's try if possible to stay on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I wouldn't be in favor of a motion to say look at Victoria for this year, potentially for the future years, but I think that we haven't consulted the businesses on Victoria yet, so we really need to make a decision for this year, but that's not a bad idea. It could be a great idea.
Yeah. Like a final shot here.
Final shot. I've been really torn on this one, as you guys know, and I think these were some compelling arguments from Councillor Page and the CAO too. I didn't realize the challenge and the risk with the Adventure Inn. I didn't appreciate that. I remember last year walking on Hall Street thinking it was awkward, but I'd found that I thought that there had been an accommodation there that was better, and realizing now that maybe there hadn't been. The other thing I have a question about before I can sort of land one way or the other is regarding transit. The moving it to the new location. I in my own mind I've really struggled to figure out how we're going to route that. I know you have thought about it, but can you speak a little bit more to the routing on transit?
I don't know if someone specifically, we've rerouted transit at different times. When it was on Josephine, we rerouted transit to accommodate that it couldn't go up and down Josephine. I assume that would be the plan, is to use Josephine instead of Hall Street.
Just cut it in.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not that big a deal. Okay. Yeah, because kind of wrapping it around to getting to the senior center was always like a big hassle for those poor folks. The North Shore bus coming around seemed to be a big hassle, but I guess it's not that big a deal. Okay. Well. All right. Well,
I call for the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
All in favor?
Wait a second.
Of your motion.
My
Can
motion.
we have the, can we read the motion again? Sorry.
I believe Councillor Lockenberg's motion is as follows, that the Eco Society be provided the 400 and 500 blocks of Hall Street as the location for the 2019 downtown Wednesday market.
Okay, that's the question. All in favor? Opposed?
Yeah.
So just a second, let's redo this here. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Morrison, where does that leave you? You can't be on that fence here, you're gonna get slivers.
Okay, I'm in favor for staying on the 400.
Pardon me?
I'm in favor.
You're in
of the
favor
motion.
of the motion?
So it fails.
No,
Well,
No,
what
because
is
3
the
of you
mayor-
voted
The mayor.
against it.
John gets to vote.
Oh, okay.
I vote in favor of the motion.
It'll still fail. You need a majority.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
well,
now you
then
gotta come back with something different.
I make a motion then. I'll put my head out there. I move that the Eco Society, the option number 1, that the Eco Society be provided 500 block and 600 block. And further, that they be directed to have the vendors face towards the street. Or, yeah, the businesses, face toward, in the center,
Businesses.
facing towards the sidewalks.
Then I'll second that.
Okay. Questions or comments?
Sorry, I'm not going to keep us here all night. I promise. The comment that I want to make on this is, I know we've heard that the Eco Society doesn't want to consider moving halfway through the season. I get that, but I also would like for them to consider, using this couple of weeks, this next week, and the next couple of weeks as a pilot. Let's reevaluate this at our next meeting and bring it back. Like, I know it might be a hassle for the Eco Society, but
I think you'd want to give them a month or something to see how it works and see how the businesses react to it. As you can see, our number 3 recommendation is to do that bigger piece, because I think we also agree with council that we really need to do some more consultation, figure out what the best location for this market is ongoing. It could, potentially move up and down Baker Street. It could be in one permanent location. It could maybe not be in the downtown.
Yeah.
I think we have to talk to our community, talk to our businesses, and do a bigger process and get some real policy in place. And because right now it's the market, it might be. We've also had pushback on individual events like the Garden Festival and others where we close a whole street. So I think this is a bigger consultation that we want to do and really get something solid going forward. I know, we've done some informal people, some people like the 400 blocks, some people, I just think that's a bigger question, and I think you want to take your time and do it properly.
yeah.
I think one of the things that bothers me about this, in all the years I've been here, it keeps coming up. Like, there's never been a solution to this market. Even the 400 block, while I think it was probably worked the best, even there was conflict over at the 400 block. And keep in mind that when Hall Street was designed, it was designed with the market in mind. The consultants, everybody else met with the Eco Society, it had the conversations. That's why the rolled curbs and everything else are there, so there's no step-up curb. That's why the bathrooms were put there. That's why the plug-ins were put there. It wasn't done in isolation, at least when I was here. What changed after that, I don't know, but at least in the early stages of Hall Street consultation, it was about how can we accommodate the market. That was going to be the festival portion of town. That's where the markets were going to be. That's where the outdoor concerts were going to be. That's where performances were going to happen. As you've seen tonight, we had a conversation here about the Mural Fest. It started and ended there last year, the whole travel thing and the tour of the murals, etc. That was what Hall Street was about, the markets, festivals, and so on. So it does concern me when the very people that wanted it there are now wanting it somewhere else. And I'm just wondering, will we ever find a solution to their challenge? I'm not so sure we will. And I'd like to add in Cottonwood. We also designed Cottonwood and the revamp of Cottonwood, and you were more involved in it than I, Janice, with the last council, was with the Eco Society in mind. They were a big player in what should happen down at Cottonwood. The big player. So we've done a lot of stuff to accommodate their needs. And I'm finding it a little bit tough at this stage to be sitting here arguing with the business people on Baker Street who felt they were in a comfort zone based on their design of Hall Street to put the market there. And now they're finding, whoops, sorry, we made a mistake, we're back on Baker. So I'm struggling with it, to be honest with you. And I think this conversation going forward needs to be had. And when people say, we want Hall Street designed for the market, that's where you're going. You're not going to go, oh, sorry, we didn't mean that, we want to go here. And that's really what we have at this point in time. So it's bothering me how this whole process is happening.
Yeah.
It's causing conflict with the market folks, and it's causing big conflict with our business community. And I think going forward, we're going to have a really good conversation with the players that run this market as to where it's going to be. And it won't be our decision in the early stages of where it should be located. The vendors and the people that run the market will need to stick to their guns. And when they give us a guarantee of where they'd like to be, that should be it. And I feel disappointed that Hall Street has been thrown in the garbage 2 years into the market. It hasn't really had a chance to catch on. And that's unfortunate. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think Councillor Anderson first.
No, you go first, I'll go after.
I appreciate that challenge. I think it's a tough one all around. We're just trying to have, I think, as a city, the best market we can. Foster some of that entrepreneurial business that will happen from those kinds of places that don't have the brick and mortar shop, drawing that downtown office crowd that isn't necessarily, and quite likely not going to wander down to Cottonwood during their lunch hour and back. Let alone remember that it's that day until they walk out the door and they're like, boom, market. So there's a big component of just being able to have that visibility and see it. And we aren't throwing Hall Street in the bin because we are still utilizing the 500 block of it. And the main point that we've created, where we've done a lot of those build-ups, those urban build-outs that make that area attractive. It's just coming into its own, and it'll take a couple more years, I think. But for now, I would hope we would support just option number one here of the 500 block, drop the 400 block on Hall and bring it down 600.
Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to be completely happy with either decision tonight, but I do think that we need to, I'd like to make an amendment. So far we have the complete of 1 and then the addition of 3 that reads, the council directs staff to complete a consultation process that includes businesses and the community to guide future market related decisions.
Second that.
So, on the amendment?
On the amendment, speaking to the amendment, moved and second. Anything on the amendment?
I just, to speak to the amendment, I think it's a great compromise. We've got potentially a new software that can help us do that quick public engagement. This would be a perfect use for it, I think. So I think it's great. It's a great opportunity to test our new public engagement.
Councillor Renwick.
Well, have we got 2 motions here, or have we got them?
Amendment, so we're gonna vote on the amendment, which is number 3
Yep.
of your staff recommendations. And
And
the
what about
full one is
what
one.
about Councillor?
One.
Then we do that afterwards.
Okay.
So then it would be included all together.
So 1 and 3 have been put together. 3 is an amendment. We have to vote on the amendment.
Would it be appropriate at this point to ask that, as an example, should this go through, that Hall Street be filled prior to Baker with the vendors? I looked at the map for the layout, and my concern would be that if there was only 50 vendors, they'd all end up on Baker.
I mean, we could do that. I think there's always a waiting list. That's my understanding.
Yeah, you could add that.
So that Hall is filled, and then should this pass, then the overflow would flow on to Baker.
Yeah.
So are we going to vote on my amendment first, or do you want me to add an amendment? to the
If
amendment?
it's friendly enough to what you put forward, I think that's fair.
I think that's a different point, so I think that we want to go through the amendment first, and then we would make an additional amendment, right? Because otherwise it changes. Like, if we're just trying to reuse Robert's rules,
Okay, we could.
but I think that that's a
That's
good idea.
fair, yeah, okay. All in favor of the amendment? Carried, thank you.
And
Do you want to put that forward?
you want to do it?
You can do it.
I'll move that we request. I move that we require Eco Society to fill the 400 block of Hall Street before 500 block of Hall Street before 600 block of Baker Street.
Thank you. Second? All in favor? Carried, thank you. So now the motion, if you want to read the new motion, please, so that everybody's clear. You've been typing away on the typewriter.
The maps.
The motion is, number one, that the Eco Society be provided the 500 block of Hall Street, the Plaza, and the 600 block of Baker Street as the location for the 2019 Downtown Wednesday Market for a one-year pilot. And further that the Eco Society be directed to fill the 500 block of Hall Street with vendors before allowing vendors to move on to the 600 block of Baker Street. And further that the Eco Society be directed to have any vendors on Baker Street face their vendor booths outwards towards the Baker Street business storefronts. That's one I would put that forward as one, and then the second amendment I would read as a second resolution.
They're all supposed to be one resolution because we voted on the amendment.
We can do
So
that.
just add an N.
And further that, council directs staff to complete a consultation process that include businesses and the community to guide future market-related decisions.
Location, not decisions, but location.
That should be a separate motion.
There might, I think the reason we wrote it that way is there might be some other aspects of the market that you want to consider as opposed to just location. You know, hours of operation,
Okay.
those sorts of things. You know, what kind of vendors could be in there, that type of.
That's fair. Is that okay with everybody? Sound okay? Okay, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you.
There's just one other thing that we want direction on. Certainly would be willing to work with the current retailers around how do they participate more in this market. So right now we require some type of license if you want to put a table out in front of your business and those sorts of things. So we'd like to waive those type of fees and look, make this much easier for those bricks and mortar retailers to, engage in on that market day so that they are part of it as opposed to be two separate things.
Yeah.
Great.
That's awesome.
Great.
Okay, thank you. We're on now to, we better get Jesse.
We're losing, Jesse. I thought we're just losing Janice again. Brings back childhood memories, eh?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so the next piece is an amendment to the official community plan, development permit area number 3, off-street parking and landscape bylaw, and bylaw notice enforcement bylaw to better address wildfire risks. And the initial reading of the OCP bylaw amendment number 3458 2019, and the first of 3 readings of the off-street parking and landscape bylaw amendment number 3459 2019, and bylaw notice enforcement bylaw number 3457 2019. And we have,
Novel in itself.
pardon?
That's a novel in itself.
Novel in itself, and I gotta tell you, there's a lot of paper here, but, well, not paper, but there's a lot of information here, and thanks very much for putting this together with the staff. And you can see here, there's several recommendations from our staff, but did you want to fill in a few gaps before we start, or?
If council so chooses, I can give just a really brief presentation on the work that we've done here. So exactly, as you've kind of mentioned, we're Development Services, in collaboration with Nelson Rescue and Fire Services, is proposing to amend the official community plan, specifically development permit area number 3, as well as the off-street parking and landscaping bylaw, to make our community more resilient against the threat of wildfire. Just to give a quick background on it, so we've had rules in place since 2008, but they haven't been updated in 6 years and no longer reflect the most recent recommendations in the BC Fire Smart program, and so that's why we've undertaken this project, as well as we're proposing a citywide regulation that would be new. So in recent years, we've come to realize that landscaping can be an important element to protect structures and homes in the event of a wildfire. And so we are recommending that landscaping be incorporated into Development Permit Area 3. We're going to focus on 2 zones, really. Well, it's one zone, they break it into 2 categories. So there's Zone 1A, which is a non-combustible zone, and that really is so any new development, a new principal building like a house, a garage, or deck. If you're going to be building that, you're going to have a non-combustible zone around that structure, so 0 to 1.5 meters, so the first 5 feet around that structure. And then priority zone 2, or 1B, is the 1.5 to 10 meters around that structure. Here we're really looking for fire-resistant plantings and also some maintenance on your property, some tree trimming, and maybe potentially some tree removal for the first 5 or 1.5 meters to 10 meters, or 5 feet to 30 feet on your property. And then landscaping in priority zones 2 and 3 is just still going to be recommendations. That's mostly speaking to rural properties and doesn't necessarily apply within the city, although there are some larger properties. We're just going to still recommend that those be recommendations. The other 2 changes are building materials. So currently we actually do have building materials as a requirement in there. So they're specific to roofing materials and exterior siding. So we're really just cleaning up the language in the bylaw to align with the BC Fire Smart recommendations, as well as adding new regulations for requiring double pane windows or tempered windows, spark arresters on the chimney, eaves and vents. They should have a wire mesh on there to prevent sparks and embers from traveling into the home and starting it on fire, as well as non-combustible decks, porches, that kind of thing. And lastly, we're proposing to register a covenant on title. So this would require the current property owner to maintain their property in accordance with the development permit regulations, as well as notify future property owners that there are some requirements for owning one of these properties, which is landscaping and building materials. And lastly, this is new. And it's been one of many debates, but we are proposing to implement a citywide planting restriction. Something that has really been interesting through this project is that if you don't live on the very edge of the city, I don't think you necessarily realize that our whole community is at risk from a wildfire ember shower. And the most effective strategy, or one of the easier tools that we have, is plantings in and around homes and structures. And so what we're proposing is that you don't plant evergreen trees or bushes within 5 feet or 1.5 meters of homes, decks, or structures. I think that's all I had. Yeah, and then I just wanted to also mention one last thing. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, point of clarification. You said homes, but do you mean all? You mean any, like a building that's not a home?
Totally, everything, all structures. Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say that this is a first start, this proposed citywide regulation, but to make our community more resilient against wildfire and a changing climate, I think further research and community awareness will be needed, and I think that will be all part of the climate change strategy that we'll be working on. And the only last thing I wanted to mention is that we wanted to make a wording change to the off-street parking and landscaping bylaw amendment so that there's an effective date for that regulation right in the bylaw. So if a homeowner or property owner was going to look, it would be really clear when that rule took place. And so what I'm recommending is that if council is supportive, that you only adopt first and second reading of the bylaw, and third reading will hold off until the next council meeting. Okay? Any questions?
Perfect.
I just have one quick one. It's new plantings or?
Yeah, so all existing vegetation will remain, but as a community member, property owner, resident, I think we want to get the word out there that there's better plantings to put really close to your structure. These are valuable. Our homes, they're the most valuable assets in lots of cases. And we want to work with the community to maybe change some of those out if possible, or if something's dying, put something else there in place that's a bit more fire resistant. And so for development services, you know, our rules are only triggered by new development and new plantings, but more broadly, I think we want to look at that, to not put those things near our homes and existing vegetation remain. So.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, with hands up all over the, we'll just go down this side of the table here. Councillor Page and then Councillor Renwick and Councillor Morris.
Yeah, my comment is more of a comment. As I was coming into council today, stopped to speak with one of the neighbors down on Vancouver Street, and they were taking down some very large spruce trees right up against their property, and it was really being motivated that the message is getting out there that well within the city limits that these beautiful big trees are a real hazard, and for the sake of everybody around them, bringing them down was and real kudos to the arborist for it only took him an hour or two to take down that many decades old tree. So yeah, looks like really great work, and looks like the start of a good comprehensive approach to what we need to do in the city to protect against this kind of ember shower. So kudos to everybody.
This is actually a question for CEO Cormac. So let's say we have somebody like your fellow you saw today, or I know I've cut down some of those big old cedar bushes and they're big and heavy and stuff. So is this something that if somebody came to the city and said, look, I want to fire smart, I want to be the good neighbor, but I'm having trouble getting rid of it. Is this something we get Public Works involved with and come and take away for them?
Maybe our fire chief has been doing the Fire Smart program, and I'm not sure if we've necessarily run into that problem, but I guess we could look at how we could assist. I think while you ask that question, we have some good news on another front.
Oh.
Yeah, why don't you? Yeah.
Sure.
Actually, we do have some grant funding that we were recently.
Do you want to go into the mic more?
You just gotta
I'm gonna sit down.
make the pregnant lady stand.
Somebody could grab Natalie a chair there.
The City of Nelson recently received a grant to help support a number of fire smart initiatives, and some portion of that funding would allow us to assist those who would need it. The difficulty is if it was widespread, the money would be very quickly spent and not be used for other things. But we do have and quite frankly, we have assisted a few folks to date in the last few weeks with taking these plants away. And I'd like to take the opportunity to point out that, as you can tell, we have a very strong and capable convert here. Natalie is starting in this project 6 months ago, has learned a lot in that time, and she's extremely passionate. And we're really here today with her making it happen. So I just wanted to point that out, because a city to take a step that is this proactive in preventing wildfire impacts throughout your community takes a team effort, and not just the fire department, not just the city manager's office. And when you know that you've got your development services on board and they're working in other departments, you've made some really good headway. And the fact of the matter is 90% of structures are lost due to falling embers, not flame impingement. So as Natalie pointed out, all of Nelson is at risk.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Very good.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I do. So I have a question, and that is in regards to, and once again, of course, stellar work coming out of our planning department. I just love these reports, and I love the drawings, and I get all excited reading one of these 25 pages reports. It makes the time go so much better. I'm wondering if, in terms of, do we have a list available to people that are participating and trying to be proactive and are taking down large trees? I just have to say my husband wants to take the big fir down in front of our house that is actually just beyond the limits of what you suggest are safe by your house, but he says it's time for it to go. But, you know, there is that factor of shade. So when somebody's coming to you and looking, are you going to have a list of plantings? Of course, we want to go more with something that's native, but in terms of that option to have some shade plants, is that something that you will have available?
Yep, absolutely. There is the BC Fire Smart planting list, which we do have available in the Development Services offices. Plus, I think the fire department's done a really great job of making their own list of plants that are acceptable and great alternatives to some of these highly combustible vegetation. And so maybe we can also get that list from the fire department and have it up in Development Services as an option.
Yeah, I have and that would be great. And maybe if we put it on the website too.
And we could
like a
absolutely put it on the
periodical.
website.
So
yeah.
here is the one that I'm sure that somebody will be sending some personal emails on this one. But when are we going to get brave enough, and when is the BC Building Code, do you think, this will be a guess on your part, going to ban the building of homes that actually have wood-burning fireplaces?
I couldn't even guess. I apologize.
I mean, it's just that really, as we go through this process, and I understand the importance of having the spark resistor in the chimney and things like that, but we also live in a valley here in Nelson, and you know, I don't have to wait for a fire to come to town that's burning in Kelowna. When my neighbors light their wood fireplaces in the wintertime, I would say that the smoke is just as bad almost as some of the summer fires that we've had smoke blow in from. We get those inversions, and the smoke just sits on top of the city from those people that use wood to heat their homes in the wintertime. So I imagine that may come with time, but I mean, that would be the next step to see the building code. Obviously, that's not something that the city of Nelson can do, but to see that kind of change come forward in the building code.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would be curious. I think some municipalities have banned wood stoves and wood-burning appliances.
Right now, we have a rebate or wood
Still,
stove
yeah, we still have that.
exchange
Yeah.
program. So, I'm not sure if those two things are compatible, but
Yeah.
You know, just
So I think
approved that
Yeah.
earlier in the year.
So I think it is possible. I think you could look into something like that. The only challenge is that there's so many people within the city that already have them and use them as primary heat sources. You can't do that anymore
Yeah.
with the building code, but that is currently what they're doing. So I think it would take.
It is in our community energy plan as an alternative to fuel-based, or I meant carbon-based fuels too.
But it definitely, it's a health issue though.
It is a health issue. It's a big health issue
No
for those people that
question
have
that
asthma.
it's,
Yeah, our inversions are.
there's inversions, you know, if you go to Lions Park in the wintertime, it's really bad because the inversions down into that area there, it's very bad with the wood burning stoves. And I don't think the stove exchange worked that well. So I don't know what the options are for,
Had a lot of uptake.
you know, not a lot of uptake. 'Cause a lot of people have moved away from them, but probably the ones that haven't still have the 25-year-old one that doesn't really scrub the smoke out very well. So that's a very good question, Councillor Morrison. Yeah, so it's something we shouldn't drop. you know,
Well,
maybe, yeah.
We'll make a note of that and put it
Yeah.
on our, again, long list of potential projects.
Any further questions for Natalie? Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify. So it's 0 to 1.5 meters, a non-combustible surface. So it has to be like crushed rock or concrete. Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So Natalie, I was looking further through, and on that note, I just want to say that thanks for the good work you're doing on the Fire Smart, and to the chief. His staff came up, we phoned the fire hall to have our house Fire Smart, and they came up and they did an excellent job and sent out a very comprehensive report after. And I just want to say this, and hopefully there's somebody watching this tonight, or the people in the media would get that message out, because we need to get that message out to the community that the fire department is more than willing to come to your home. They're not going to throw you in jail or anything else, but they'll give you a really good report as to, and in my case, it was very simple. There was very little that they had to notice, but the few things they did, you know, in the back of my mind, I knew myself, but you just don't get around to it. But when you get a report from one of the firemen that come up there, or the chief or whoever, then you take a second look at that, and we've acted on the recommendations. And there were several things that they bring to your attention, such as using bark mulch, which we all have probably over the years, is not a good idea.
Doormats.
The doormats, you know, we got that. If you play hockey, you're welcome in here, sitting at the front of the house, and it can go up in a flash, right? It's a straw thing that's sort of, you know, so that's the kind of stuff that the Fire Smart program can help us with, because I think as individuals, we're responsible not only for our own home, but if we're creating a risk situation for our neighbours, that's even worse.
Yeah.
So if we care about our community and our neighbours, and get the fire department up, give them a call, they'll come up and they'll do that and look at your home and help you out. So, and they're not going to put pressure on you to have it done next week or anything else, but they'll give you a plan how you could sort of work through these things. So thanks very much for doing that. And on the building side, I was just talking to Councillor Woodward today, and one thing that's bothered me for years is that vinyl siding. And I noticed it's not one of the recommended products in your...
Yep, I think we've actually said no vinyl siding.
Yeah,
if I
exactly.
can
I don't think it
remember.
says that, but it does say what you
does say no
can
vinyl.
use.
Yeah.
Does it say no? I didn't see
vinyl.
no.
My recollection, I think it does say no vinyl siding, and that's because it doesn't act that well in a fire. It doesn't necessarily burn.
Not
but
at all,
it
no.
Yeah.
No.
So.
And not to mention the fact that it's, again, you're banning plastic bags, but vinyl siding is a lot of vinyl. Right? It's a lot of plastic. So I was glad to see that in there, because I recall going when Kelowna had the fire, the houses that were still standing, most of them had stucco on them.
Right.
And the ones that were on the ground had vinyl siding. So that's another piece of the puzzle. So any further questions for Natalie? Okay, hearing none, let's get back to the topic here then. There are a number of recommendations here for adoption, and I think we have to do them separately, Kevin, right?
Yeah, and as Natalie asked, we won't do third reading on,
Yeah.
we wouldn't do number 3 here?
Yeah, the third reading for the off-street parking landscaping bylaw, I'm recommending that we hold on that until the next meeting.
And same with the bylaw enforcement, we'll wait to
You're
bring those
leaving
back
those?
together.
You're leaving those out tonight?
Sure, whatever is easy process-wise, that would be fine.
So you're leaving out number 3 and
Number 5.
number 5. Okay, so then, in that case, then we'll deal with the other ones. I'll just mark them here.
Move recommendation number 1.
Second.
Second, questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried.
I'll move 2.
2. That's
Second.
the off-street parking amendment, citywide. That's the one you wanted to
Yep.
leave in, Natalie?
Yes.
First and second.
Okay. Councillor Morrison moving first and second reading.
Oh,
Councillor Anderson, seconded by,
Anderson. She seconded it.
I moved it, she seconded it.
very good. Okay, done.
Number
All in
4.
favor? Carried. Okay. Next,
Number 4.
Councillor Morrison and Councillor Anderson again. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, number
And
6.
number 6.
Just a bylaw factory line
Councillor
over there.
Woodward, this time you want your name on the, somewhere on this agenda, right? It's always nice when you look back like 50 years from now at the old agendas and say, oh, my name is on there. Okay, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
That's the problem.
Carried, thanks very much.
Same topic.
All right, and the other two sit?
Yeah.
Okay, and they'll come back for final reading, right?
Thanks,
Thanks very much, Natalie. It's been a
Thanks,
long day
Natalie.
for you. You've been here several times
guys.
tonight, so thanks for your help. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Fine.
Why am I lost here?
Shit to do.
Just want to say we have our staff.
I know,
Is our audience.
I know, that's good.
Yeah.
We couldn't get anybody else to show up.
It can't be that exciting because we had one guy
Back in the
sleeping.
gallery.
We have one guy sleeping, so it can't be that exciting. Oh, no, he's awake. Just checking. All right, the inter-community business license, I think that's the next one up, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. And this has been talked about for a long time. Now that you created door.
You missed B.
Miss B?
B.
Oh, sorry.
And I'll move that because that was a request that I had put in for staff to deal with.
Council procedure bylaw, and you're moving the recommendation?
Yes, I am.
Right off the bat? Okay. Moved and seconded, Councillor Anderson? Twins over here. Any questions or comments? Hearing none? All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much.
Early bedtimes.
Can we go on to the next one now? Intercity, okay. Inter-community, actually. So we have, in order to create a door-to-door inter-community bylaw, staff is proposing a change to the definition of participating municipality that would eliminate the need to amend the ICBL bylaw each time another community wishes to participate. So there's a recommendation here. This means the business license?
Yep.
So this means you can get a business license in Trail and hopefully work in Nelson and vice versa. So mover and a seconder, right here again.
I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor Woodward.
It's already moved, Jesse.
It's already been moved, sorry, you're a little bit late.
Councillor
Sorry.
Page,
Good luck.
second by Councillor Page. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Thanks very much.
You're welcome, Jeff.
Okay, development services.
Before you start that one, I'll ask to leave. See, I have to get a few in, Jesse, because
Okay.
I have to,
You gotta get ready here.
I gotta go again.
All right.
Please,
Minor housekeeping, some minor
Houses do you
housekeeping.
have?
No, this is the one that
this is the one
May the
public
6th,
hearing was about.
still in there.
May the 6th, 2019 regular meeting, development services presented for initial reading, a series of minor bylaw amendments to subdivision and development services bylaw, the off-street parking and landscape bylaw, and the fees and charges bylaw, and the official community plan, and finally the zoning bylaw. And once again, there's a very comprehensive report available for council with a number of recommendations, and I'd like to just get a bit of clarity here. Sebastian, do you want to give us a bit of overview?
I'm not
And that's-
Sebastian.
Alex.
Sorry, Alex, if you're going
Alex.
We look a lot alike.
to pull something out of here. That's all. They're all up to go ahead, are they?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Not gonna do like Natalie did to us. And,
No, this is final adoption for all of these.
Yeah.
Exactly.
go ahead.
All right. So we had the public hearing then just a couple of hours ago then on the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendments. So again, very quickly, to keep it very brief on those, they mostly reflect changes to the BC Building Code and Building Act, which has limited municipalities' power to require certain building techniques and features. And the amending bylaws also address a number of sort of minor adjustments to development permit areas concerning where parking is located, and concerning sort of the wording of a number of clauses in there. In the zoning bylaw, specifically, there are changes proposed for new diagrams to sort of better clarify the contents and certain kind of tricky definitions of how we calculate things like height, the height envelope specifically in there. And then we also have the addition of the new category of row housing to better kind of define how row housing height is calculated, and instead of looking at it as one gigantic structure, which can make a big difference, particularly if it's on a slope. Changes as well to kind of a bit of a relaxation for retaining wall siting in cases where a retaining wall is required by an engineer. As well, finally, on the zoning bylaw front, adding short-term rental as a permitted use to the CD3 zone on 7th Street. The other bylaws then that we didn't talk about a couple hours ago that didn't go to public hearing then were the subdivision and development servicing amending bylaw, where we are primarily making change to the location of the driveway access, i.e. curb cut regulations, moving them out of there. So that's reflected in there. The fees and charges bylaw, creating a new damage deposit for trees in cases where a public tree or a city tree can be at risk during construction on private land, and other items of clarification for connection fees. And then finally, there was the off-street parking and landscape bylaw, which includes a number of changes ranging from the downtown parking zone and in situations where additional parking isn't required when an existing building changes use. Also, the addition of accessible vehicle parking requirements because the BC Building Code no longer regulates this since December. reduction in visitor parking requirements for multi-unit residential in order to give a bit more sort of leeway and relaxation to small multi-unit residential development projects. And also the biggest addition then to this bylaw is, well, moving those driveway access requirements from the subdivision bylaw to the parking bylaw, where people are, more likely to be looking for them in here, and adding a couple additions to those regulations as well, with the objective of preserving, key on-street parking assets for the general public, and also bringing in a new home here for the landscaping requirements to have those centralized. So again, taking those out of the OCP and putting them all here in the bylaw that's already called the landscape bylaw, again, for clarification purposes, with a number of changes in there as well too, to how, when a landscape plan is required, what specifically is required in there, mostly with the objective then of facilitating the development of small scale multi-unit residential buildings.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none. Okay, we have a long list here, folks, and we'll have to do them one at a time. And if somebody wants to move them one by one, we'll be happy to do the same thing. Councillor Page, that's number one, subdivision.
I'll second.
Second by Councillor.
do it this time.
Yeah, that's it this time.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Councillor
We'll get this
Renwick,
one.
questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the off-street parking landscape, moved by Councillor Renwick and second by Councillor Page. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Number 3.
Move 3.
Second by Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? 4.
Move 4.
Councillor Page, Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
Move 5.
Well, somebody
Councillor
else.
Luxembourg.
No.
Come on.
I thought I heard his voice there.
Nope.
No? Okay. Councillor Page. Councillor Renwick. All right. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you. 6, zoning amendment. Bylaw. Councillor Woodward. Councillor Renwick. All in favor? Carried. And 7, zoning amendment bylaw.
This is what I want.
Right, I'll move that one.
You want, okay, Councillor Lachtenberg.
Second.
And Councillor Renwick. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Moving right along.
Anybody want to time out for a minute or two? Or you yeah, maybe take a.
Yeah.
I'm getting
Take a 5 minute?
Yeah, take
Yeah. Cool. Raptors lost.
Perhaps 1 by 1. They lost by 1 point.
1 point.
106, 105.
And they had the ball.
Why are we taking a break?
Yeah.
Planning to ball.
Okay, where are we here?
Okay. Everybody ready? There. Where are we? Nelson Fiber. Is that the one?
Yeah. That's the one.
All right, a review of Nelson Fiber Network will be provided to council in preparation for the proposed amendment to the optical fiber service bylaw and the fees and charges bylaw that will be introduced on June the 24th special meeting. You have the floor.
Yeah, so I was gonna start, Nelson will add as necessary. As you saw in the report Alison wrote, we really did step back and really looked at what is the city's interest in fiber. Why, first of all, why did we get into fiber? What are we looking at in terms of the future? And those are the, I think, 5 goals that we identified in the report. So number 1 are the genesis of why we got in fiber in the beginning was really to look at how we best operate the city, and that's not diminishing. In fact, that's probably growing as you can control your utilities, etc., more and more with technology. I think, I don't know if any of this present council were when Dan Geisler did the Volt optimization. That was during budget, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we did a pilot. How do we best manage our use of energy? How do we give that benefit to customers? And we can do that through technology, looking at that what that use of that energy is at the end of the line, and because basically they have to, presently, without that technology, you have to assume that there's going to be this load at the end of the line, and have enough energy in that line to serve that customer at the end of the line, when in actual fact there might be 10 customers before that person that isn't using the full capacity, so you're over providing energy, and both that's a cost to us and clearly a waste of energy. So we're seeing that to become larger and larger. Ultimately, we want to see that we can connect our substation up at 6 Mile all the way to our power plant out in Bonington and manage our utility. We see the same thing on water and sanitary down the road. I know talking to one of the local service providers, when we do this, when we put this line to bring Celis and Anderson to Mountain Station, he's saying we should lay conduit as part of that so that we can control that in the future. And obviously with security, we want to make sure that all those assets that are critical to our citizens are secure. So that was the reason we got into it. That's still our number one reason. Then we, as part of that downtown conversion, when we were putting the electrical underground down those laneways, there was an opportunity to lay conduit in our laneways and give the opportunity for our business community to have some options, because in those days there wasn't very many options, and if you needed that level of connectivity, it was really expensive to do that. And certainly a user such as the City of Nelson, and we confirm this with CBBC, some other communities, again, to get that level of connectivity, it's very expensive even today. How did we get fiber kind of more in our residential areas, et cetera? That was in partnership with the province. They were looking to bring fiber to the schools. They paid for all that cost of bringing that fiber to all the schools, all the provincial buildings, and the colleges, campuses in the city, and now they can operate their network over that without having this third party. And in fact, they had some options at various times to go to a different model, and they've consistently come back and said, no, we want control of our network. We like the fact that we can connect all our buildings together and utilize that. So that was the anchor tenants. The City of Nelson did not pay the cost of that. The province paid that, and now they pay us per building to stay on our fiber, and they do all the electronics on that. I talked about the local businesses, whether that's a nonprofit. You see organizations like the Civic Theater Society that wants to build technology as part of their core work that they do, and we are able to enable that. And finally, putting Nelson on the global stage. I think those of you that were at the Tech Summit, Nelson's known out there. We were able to compete at the top level of communities around the world. When we placed in the top 21 for the ICF, we were competing with Moscow and Ottawa and communities that are huge and are multiple times the size of us, and we were 1 point away from being in the top 7 at that time. 1 point away, we would have been in the top 7 in the world, any size community. So I think Nelson and region has really created a reputation of that. That's the type of entrepreneur we're able to attract. I know a number of them have said that was kind of their first introduction to Nelson, knowing that we had broadband, that we had our own dark fiber, and they were interested in that. Certainly the traditional telcos were, as everyone was at the TELUS fiber optics launch, when we were talking with them years ago. The mayor was, and the council at the time was very supportive. They had a number of asks that we weren't able to accommodate, and that included lobbying the CRTC to, to allow them only to use their fiber and not allow any others on their fiber, which was directly in opposition to the FCM's position on that. They wanted us to, endorse their product. Again, we can assist small business. That's evolved over time, and, certainly we're supportive. We have never looked at us providing fiber to residential customers. That's a whole different piece. We think the traditional telcos have the opportunity to do that and probably more capacity than we do. And finally, our service providers. We have local service providers that, they don't just provide the internet connection, they provide a host of services around that to assist small business, whether that's backup, telephones, et cetera, et cetera. Allison would be better to talk about that, but that's really that niche. We want to see this as a business support in our service providers, and they are small businesses in our community, and we have a high level of expertise in our community, just as we have with the financial services. How do we take a resource, in this case Colin, and assist these other smaller communities? I know I spoke to one of our local service providers. They're looking to do that on that IT side for these small communities. How do they manage a more greater and greater complex world where that IT part of it is a core part of your business now. If you can't, if you don't have that, it's really difficult to do your business. And just as they don't have the financial expertise necessarily in some of those smaller communities, they don't have the tech expertise as well. So how can that be done remotely by those that do that? So that's really what we boiled down to, what our interest in staying in the fiber business. Clearly, as anything, over time, things change, and I think when we first got into this, it was probably a much more restricted sort of market. Now that it's opening up, we've heard from our service providers that we need to look at, our fee structure to make it more cost effective. At the end of the day, the City of Nelson has always said, we're here actually to support the economic and prosperity of our community, whether that's a nonprofit or a business. That's what we're trying to do. This isn't us trying to grow a fiber business on its own for the sake of a fiber business. This is really, how do we support our business community and nonprofit community. Alison, is there anything that you wanted to add to that, or is that a good overview?
That we're embracing that change, and, business changes over time, and we see any broadband provider, TELUS, Shaw, Nelson Fiber, all the service providers that support our own fiber network as valuable assets to the community. So we are embracing change, and we are trying to modify our rates and our regulatory process to make sure that it fits with those goals.
Sorry, hang on, Alison.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, passing out.
That's a really full. So let's just take a break.
That
for a
happens
second.
to me when they do.
If
When
it
we
gets
talk
hot in
about
here,
fiber.
do not play with the temperature gauge. Just hold that black button on the side in until you hear it click in, and then
tech support, eh?
Now it's just gonna get worse, Natalie.
2 of these days.
just hold it until you hear it.
There you go.
There you go. Simple as that. Sorry. Leave the temperature at
That's okay.
whatever.
So, yeah, and I would just like to emphasize that leading up to these requests for changes, not only does the competitive environment change for Nelson Fiber and its service providers, but we engaged an experienced telecom specialist who specialized in dark fiber. He's from Europe. He's done lots of open access types of models and networking and so forth. So that's the report that you see before, included in the package, where we looked at, the 4 BC municipalities that are delivering dark fiber, and what do they do. We turned out to be the cheapest fiber in Canada, which was kind of one of my goals to set out to prove in that report, but also that we had the most customers, and that speaks volumes for a community this size. Some of our those municipalities that were compared have lots of high-rise towers that they can actually service. We don't have that here, so So that was part of the engagement, and then we engaged the service providers during that report that was done in the fall of 2018, and you have a copy of that, as well as re-engaging the service providers after TELUS made their announcement to try and figure out what works for them. And they're also reselling TELUS and Shaw and the traditional services. So I think there's lots of advantage for Nelson in lots of different community providers of broadband. And we'll just see more and more of it. And we embrace the announcements with TELUS, and Shaw will come along, and there'll be other solutions that will come on just naturally as part of this tech evolution. But I think that Nelson is well positioned for the next intelligent community application, where one of the initiatives was to add space downstairs. So this community data center co-location facility that we are ready to receive customers into, they can apply to me directly now. School District 8 is moving in there. They've already moved pretty much some of their stuff. So we're starting to see the adoption of a new customer in our local community taking advantage of that high-value facility. So we'll be starting to reach out to other municipalities if they want a compartment, or maybe they're still going to do their online services. That's okay, because there's lots of different options, and we're offering that community data center as a new service in addition to the fiber. So we'll be coming for you on June 24th with the details of the fees and rates changes, but mostly this is about modifying the rates in the fees bylaw and making the regulatory changes to accommodate some of the service provider requests for billing directly, things like that.
I think the core thing, at least I heard from the service providers, is much like West Kootenay Transit. You know, let's get out of the way of those service providers. Let's be in the background and let them do their business. We will, we provide that highway. They light it up and put the cars on it, and we just need to reduce some of our regulatory piece, let them find out how they work with a small business and how they give them value, and that's really our message to them is we're really looking for you to provide value to our community, and we will stay out of your way if you can do that. And, the end customer doesn't need to know it's our dark fiber or TELUS's or whoever. They just need to know that there's a reliable highway there that they can run their products on, and that's really what we're going to try to do is step back, let them be out front, and support them in supporting our business and nonprofit. Even we're working with a couple of our current housing providers and saying, we have these new projects being built, so how do we make that accessible to their residents, where they don't probably have the capacity for each one to have, buy an internet service, or I don't know, apparently you don't get cable services anymore, but maybe some of them do because they're probably my age instead of your age. But so how do we do that so that they can provide this higher level service to all those folks in those complexes and not have to incur this room by room cost or apartment by apartment. So I think there's some real opportunity in that side as well. And so tonight is just to receive the report. We just wanted to give you more of a background. We just didn't want to bring a bylaw sort of cold turkey to you and not, you don't know the philosophy behind what we're trying to achieve there.
Sweet.
So it's
a
matter.
Motion.
Yeah.
Well, any questions?
Second.
Second, okay. Any questions from the staff? Okay, Keith, good.
I did want to know if we could touch a little bit on the recommendations under the governance analysis. There was a suggested action of operating as a local government corporation, which I think the desire was to make Nelson Fiber a little bit more nimble in terms of making choices going forward, because I think that is part of when you look at what Canal Flats is doing and kind of being at the edge of an industry that's moving very quickly, being able to make new choices about opportunities and what's a barrier for the customers without going through council is something that we might want to have at least a discussion about.
that's probably a bit of a longer term one that we want, or medium term, I would suggest. I think we want to make these changes, see what that uptake is, see how what kind of customer base we have, what's that real niche, because I think we need to understand that a bit better. Corporation has some, it has definitely some benefits, but it also, I think you need to be probably a certain scale to invest in setting up a corporation. Then you need a board of directors and others that are separate from council. My sense is if you put these regulations in, we kind of step back a bit, and we're not actively being the I guess the driver of dark fiber, or we're the dark fiber, but as far as the the service, that's really the service provider. So I think let's put it on the radar. Yeah. Let's roll this out, see what the uptake, see how this rolls out, and revisit that in 6 months or so, and see how that works.
Yep, just want to have the discussion about how we structure this and whether is this the best governance model.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Alison, I got a question for you. Would this conversation be happening if TELUS hadn't come here?
Yes. We've
Yeah.
been looking at reducing our rates for quite a while to support the service providers and bring the cost of it down.
Yeah.
So yes, I think we would have adjusted the rates over time, but this is creating faster action on our part to reduce the rates. But again, we also want to encourage partnerships with the local, not just the local service providers, but also TELUS and Shaw. So those conversations are ongoing. If they want to deliver service over Nelson Fiber, we're happy to entertain that also. So this is about supporting all service providers over Nelson Fiber, not just the local ones we have in our data center.
And we have partnerships with them now on our poles, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think two things have happened over the last number of years. Both the service providers have evolved into what they felt was sort of the right model, and so have we. So I think they've kind of changed what their expectation, what they see as being supportive, and what's getting in the way. And as Alison said, that's been a conversation for a number of years, well before TELUS made the fiber optics announcement, that they felt there was things like we had an admin fee, and we build part of it and they build part of it, and it, connection charges was a large upfront ask for the business community. So not all those things were in the mix well before that.
And then Columbia Basin Broadband Corporation too is a key strategic partner in our community,
Yeah.
and they're a funding partner and a colo customer also. So, and they're building all the way up to the Slocan Valley. So that's a key partnership to explore.
Oh, okay, excellent. All right, so there's a recommendation here, folks, for Alison to bring this back again on June 24th, right?
Yes.
I'd like somebody to move the motion.
It's already been moved and seconded.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And let's all in favor. It's the easy part.
Yeah.
Good, okay, thank you very much, Alison.
Thanks, Alison.
Thank you.
Active transportation plan. Oh, we had one.
Sebastian again. We have one.
You
It's
back
a lot
again?
of date again.
A lot of stuff. Walk on over. Come on down.
Yeah,
I have an overview here as to
Okay,
why
sure.
you're updating this thing, more or less, although it says here, but
Yeah, so I guess just to, in essence, the active transportation plan exists since 2010. There's actually digging into it. We've done some of the items, some we haven't done. And it's kind of, I think there's been changes in staff and things like that. So now we're kind of trying to piece it all back together, what's happened over the last 10 years or so. But anyways, the plan says that it should be updated every 5 years. So we're a bit overdue on updating it. So the whole purpose of this work, setting up this working group, is during a fairly short time frame over the summer months, go over the current plan, see what we've done, see where we should be going, and then at the end of our little review is come back to council and say, okay, here's where we need to go. I guess our thought on is that we don't need to rewrite this plan. We just need to go through it and make some slight adjustments. And if essentially the plan is by October is bring something to council and say, okay, here's where we need to go in the next few years, and try to be a little more ready when these grant applications open up, like Bike BC comes up, that we know what projects are like shovel ready almost, so that we're not trying to make up stuff on the fly. So it's really being really proactive and not necessarily waiting for grants to come in, but for us to be kind of chasing grants. So essentially that's the plan. So we've trying to set up a little group of people that would be interested in reviewing this. I know that there's already quite a few people that have approached me and are interested. So work with them, and over the next 4 months, come up with a review and a game plan for council.
Excellent.
Great. Actually, the other interesting thing, when I just off the top of my head, when I was looking at what things have we done.
So we do make things up on the fly.
Yeah, we do. No, but if you look at the number of projects that weren't necessarily in the plan, but we made improvement. Even look at Hall Street, right? That was very walk unfriendly. Now it's lots of people you walk up and down Hall Street because we've fixed this. The stairs, they're not these things like this. So there's a ton of things that we're contemplating in the plan, but certainly met the philosophy of what we're trying to do. Everything from benches to trees, etc. We've actually done quite a bit, and even sidewalk upgrades and plow routes to schools, etc. So there's a lot that we've actually managed to do. We just, I think, need to document it and recognize that and piece it together and look at how we make this work.
So we're looking for two councillors. Councillor Renwick, you're on APC, right? So that kind of fits with the planning department, but I don't know who else would be.
I would love to.
Put up your hand if you're interested.
Up your hand if you're interested. So we're going to have 5 councillors on.
Well, that doesn't mean there won't be consultation if you,
Okay.
Certainly put your. This is kind of a steering committee, but they're going to reach out to others around this. The other thing, just to let council know, I think maybe Sarah put this out, but on the 26th, we'd like to get together and actually talk about some of your priorities, which active transportation is one of them. What does that look like? Because we're, we had a short time in Roslyn to kind of get it out there. We just didn't have much time to put the meat on the bones, and I think we need to do that. So this committee has a good sense of what council's expectations are, because it can be from here to here. You kind of need to know what's kind of in here.
Well, I propose we have a race around the building.
I think you're going to win, Rick.
Oh, well.
No, I think you need to check your phone. Who has been most active today?
Okay, sorry.
Morrison, you got a question.
No, I don't have a question. I'd like to move the following resolution. The council approves the establishment of the Active Transportation Working Group for a period of 4 months with the option to renew, and further that council appoint Councillor Renwick and Councillor Anderson to the Active Transportation Working Group.
I second it.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a seconder. Any questions or comments from the ones that are disappointed?
Well, I'd like to hear from the councillors who want to be on it, why they want to be on it.
So it's like a bit of a campaign speech.
Chance to sell yourself.
Could we sort of pass that formality and just go ahead and I'm sure they're on there for the right reasons.
Well, no, I mean, you know what? I think that we should talk about it actually, because I know that there's definitely 3 other councillors that also want to be on it. So I think that this is something we should do. I feel like active transportation has gotten to the forefront of part of our agenda because I brought it up at the council table. I put it up at the council table. I've been incessant almost every single decision that we've made that has something to do with transportation to, the dismay of Janice that I have been, really pushing this forward. So,
Yeah, you just lost the vote.
no, I know.
See, I was the only council that didn't put up my hand to be on it as much as I would like to be on it. And so I felt I could move who I, as the neutral party.
Thanks, Janice. No, I thought you were sighing over there. So I appreciate that. But, I also think other councillors would do a good job as well. It is something I'm passionate about. But, for the sake of time, I'll keep it short, which everyone appreciates.
I just think it's a haywire format, what's going on here. To be truthful with you, we had 2 people recommended. I think they're as confident as everybody else, and let's move on.
Yeah. Well, I would
That's
just.
the way I see it.
No, that's good. Come on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I would just ask our 2 active transportation to schedule something where we can really sit down and dig into this, because I know the 3 of us really have a lot of we'd like to contribute.
Well, that'll happen. Though.
Actually,
Yeah.
I think I like that balance that, someone that's super passionate about that. The folks you have to convince are the ones that aren't quite as passionate about
Right.
doing that. Cal will have a good lens into that group that's.
That was
honestly,
Laughing at it.
it's just an age.
I'm a convert.
Yeah.
I'm
Not
a
that
convert,
he
thanks
is.
to you. So
Amazing what happens.
Like
when
you don't
quit
have to
selling
convince
cars.
the convinced.
Well, then
To
clearly you
convince
need the smallest
unconvinced.
counselor and the biggest counselor. Around the community, the other one's hard. So here's the balance.
I think the point here is that it's 4 months, and maybe if there's an option to renew because the work didn't get accomplished, then we put 2 other councillors on there and see if they can get the job done.
For another 4 months.
The doers.
I'm still gonna
Okay, I'm
document all the
going
goat
to call the
trails.
question, folks. We're like 9:15 here.
Yep.
We still have lots to do yet. So, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you,
Next is
Sebastian.
Sebastian, I look forward to working with you.
All of them.
next is the street
All
lighting
the streetlights.
replacement and development services by the results of a survey on the proposed downtown streetlights, as well as options to replace the heritage
Yep, I do.
streetlights. Now, I don't know if you want to give us a bit of an overview. I think it's
Sure.
always
yeah.
good when people sit around most of the night to help us that we ask them to help.
Okay, well, we're just getting ready here. So that's right, development services in collaboration. Oh, yeah. It's a brief presentation, I promise. Full screen mode, okay. So development services in collaboration with Public Works as well as Nelson Hydro has been trying to get this project kind of completed. And we've done, a pretty comprehensive review as well as public engagement to get us to this point. So just to give a little bit of background, so our heritage streetlights are over 30 years old. Typically, these type of decorative lights last between 15 and 25 years, just depending on a number of factors, material, location, weather exposure, that kind of thing. And so it's kind of been identified that they are at their end of life and they do need to be replaced. We've had an assessment done of the lights, and we've identified that there is structural deterioration, and so they should be replaced within the next couple years. In fact, some have actually fallen over or cracked. And so there are places where they have been removed and not replaced because we have no replacement parts and we can't get them anymore. And just a bit more background on that is that these are replicas of the original historic streetlight, and it was done in the 1980s as the downtown revitalization plan, so that was all part of that. At that time, the city actually received significant grants to be able to reproduce these lights, and that's how we were able to get our downtown full of them. Unfortunately, we did not own the cast, and the company that owned it has been bought and sold a number of times, and the new company no longer has the cast or the toolings to reproduce this. And so they said, basically, you're going to have to restart the process again or come up with another option. So we're providing council with 3 options to consider. So it's buy a streetlight off the shelf, recast the existing streetlights, or try and refurbish what we have. Okay, so just to give a little bit of background on repurchasing a standard streetlight. There's lots of great options out there, and I've been reviewing for the last year or so what our options are. We can almost get a very similar replica to what we currently have, but it's produced by a heritage manufacturer, and we just order it and they send it here. So it's easier and simpler than the process before. To figure out what streetlight we were going to choose, we did some public consultation. We consulted with the business community as well as the public. So we got a recommendation from the lighting committee, which is in your report. We did a public survey where flyers were delivered to the downtown businesses, letting them know about the survey, as well as some advertising with the chamber. It was in the newspaper, city website, and social media. So we came up with 5 options for people to review. So 2 are heritage style globe lights that are really similar to what we have. The 3 globe option is very close. Like, I'd say that most people wouldn't really know the difference. A heritage person would probably notice, but they're very close. 2 globe style light. Both of those are not dark sky compliant, so we kind of pointed that out in the survey. 2 complementary heritage style lights, so that's the Essentra and the Renaissance, and then 1 modern style light to kind of be contrasting to our heritage downtown. The survey included pros and cons, as well as the cost per light and the cost to replace all 85 streetlights. So everybody had that information. The number 1 choice was the Essentra. It's in the mid-price range. And then the second was the 2 globe style light. And so just to give you a bit of background information on the 2 other options. So recasting the existing streetlight is possible. It was kind of described to me as a dying art, so you'd have to kind of find somebody to figure that out, but it's possible. It would cost about $60,000 to make the mold for us, and it would probably take about 6 months for that process. On top of that, it would cost another $10,000 to get the light certified CSA so that our electricians could actually install it. It would cost $10,000 approximately per light to make these, because they're custom now, and so they're only making them for us, and so it is on the higher end of what we were looking at, but it is possible. And if we were going to go in that direction, I just recommend that the city obtain the rights to that cast so that we could reproduce these indefinitely, as long as we could find someone to make them. So our third option is refurbish the existing streetlights. I just kind of want to mention that these are replicas, so they're not the original. So we'd be refurbishing a replica, but I mean, it is kind of heritage now because it's almost 30 years old. Some of the challenges with refurbishing is we've already lost a number of lights. I kind of just was walking downtown, I'd say 1 or 2 at every block. So, we're still missing some lights, so we're still going to have to buy something or recast something to be able to do that. In the meantime, if we take away lights, are we going to have to buy temporary lights? And then the other kind of unknown factor is that we don't know how much it's going to cost to refurbish, because they have to actually be removed and assessed for damage and sent away. So it's kind of a bit of unknown, but it is also, I guess we could explore that option if council was interested. Okay, so just to get to my recommendation, I'm recommending that we replace the light with an off-the-shelf version, and that we go with a light that looks really close to the Essentra streetlight as outlined in the survey. My second recommendation is that the heritage streetlights on Victoria Street are a slightly newer version of what we have downtown. They're elevated and they're kind of pushed back from the street, and they're actually in pretty good shape, and we haven't had any issues with those. So I'm thinking we leave those on Victoria Street for as long as possible. Granted, we can fix them and repair them over time. So that's it.
Any questions? Oh, here we, is that your hand up or just your?
No, I was gonna move the recommendation, and so move the recommendation for discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay, now you can go. Mover and seconder, you want to speak?
I'm fine. Once again, a comprehensive report. I like the idea that we went out to the public, that we had a lighting committee, that we sort of ticked all the boxes. And it's interesting to see how people react. I read all the comments. It was pretty entertaining. So I'm happy. I like the style. It wasn't the one that I picked when I filled out the survey. But I think that we should just go ahead. And I think the other 2 options are really cost prohibitive in terms of recasting and finding some way to do that. And yeah, and I like the idea of the LED. I like the downcast, not the upcast. I think that all of these things about the light pollution are very important. And as long as they can hang gorgeous flower baskets in the summer and I'm sure that CDC will have some art competitions for potential different kinds of banners that could be on the banner poles. I think they meet all of the criteria that our current poles don't, because they can't hold up flower baskets that are full of water anymore. I mean, so I think it's time to move on to something that's new and is going to have some longevity.
Yeah, no, I agree. The light pollution is a big concern, and I think the tri-globes are a big problem with that, and the Ancestra, anyway, is the way to go.
Then Councillor Boyd.
Natalie, are we doing this right away? We're not waiting till
We're doing this
redo
right.
services on Baker Street or something?
No, we're gonna temporarily mount these on the existing, and then when we redo Baker Street, we do not have time to wait. Ideally, we would do it at that time, but we don't have that option, unfortunately.
And just to follow up, years ago when the city replaced street signs, they sold them. People could buy them if they happen to live on, I know a friend of mine bought Lake Street because her name used to be Lake. And is there any appetite for people to buy these? I know there's one up in Rosemont in somebody's front yard. Is there anything there?
We can look at that. We do have a policy on disposal of surplus equipment, but we can certainly bring that back. I know the chamber, I think, is interested in the new plaza design. Obviously, it's in public property. We would, or where public is accessing that property, would want to make sure that they did the proper refurbishment if they were going to use those. So I think there is definitely interest in those, and we have a policy, and we can certainly look at how we apply that.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Page.
So, love the ancestral light. I think that's what I kind of picked. I did not fill out the survey. There were two things here, though. The lights on Victoria Street, they're made by the same company that made the rest of them. They just came in a little bit later.
You know, that's my understanding of it. I think those were still purchased sometime 30-ish years ago. I don't have a lot of information on them, but they are different. They look a little different. They're like a version 2 of it, but I can't, and I was talking to Nelson Hydro, and they said, yeah, lots of the parts and stuff from the ones on the Baker Street actually can't totally be reused for those lights because they are different, but I don't have the background or history on it. I just know that they're in decent enough shape that they could be remained.
Okay, and the other comment I had was in regards to the LED bulb that we're using in it, and I think some of the stuff I've seen from the dark sky compliance is that using the extra bulbs, using the bulbs that have those extra looms and extra brightness is actually causes quite a lot of reflection back down. Like, have we considered the kinds of bulbs and what output for looms they'll be putting out in terms of whether they're just so much brighter inside that they reflect up?
Yeah, LED lights will be certainly much brighter than what we have downtown, and I'll just kind of mention that our current light standard doesn't meet any kind of light standard downtown, like it's quite dark. While I was going through this process, as part of the procurement, we can actually ask them to send us the light, and we can install it and see how it looks, and that is common, so we can do that as part of our process. We know the style that we want now, and so people can send us different light samples. And for the Heritage Streetlight replacement, one of the suppliers actually gave us LED bulbs, and they installed one in our Heritage Streetlight by Backroads. So I don't know how that looks, but anyway, so there's some ability to change the light temperature and the brightness of those lights, from what I understand, and we'll do those testings.
Okay. Thanks.
Just through the chair, just curious. The old light standards had plugins, so that if you were doing a street event, you could do some small energy draw off of them. Do these?
Yes, you can have plugins for these as well. You can kind of customize them. They're off the shelf.
Okay.
But the poles and the attachments and all that kind of stuff, you kind of ask for what you need. And as far as I was aware, we were putting
Great.
plugins in them to hang lights and kinds of things. So yes,
Great.
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
It's more of the power supply to them that's the challenging in some places.
Thank you.
So a couple of questions I had was, the one that's being recommended is 2 stories in height. Now that's significantly higher than the existing.
Yeah, our existing's about 1 story in height.
Well, I'm just wondering about the pressure point at the base, because what's happened to ours, if I'm not mistaken, is the base is eventually rotted out or they crystallized, or what happens to aluminum, it kind of, over time, it just sort of breaks down. Do these have the capacity to stand the kind of pressure that may be put on them from wind, or how do we manage the traffic lights?
Traffic lights are the ones that we're going because of the cantilever.
Pardon me?
Well, like you're saying on the base, I mean, it's one thing to go up, but
Yeah.
when this traffic light goes out,
Yeah.
now you're pulling, that's where
Right.
the issues is.
The other thing I heard from Nelson Hydro was the current placement is not ideal.
No, I get that, but hang on a second. I know where you're going there, Kevin, because that's a. I just want to get this right, because it's 30 years, right?
Totally.
And like the location is one thing that's challenging for sure, because you got tight corners and people run over them. But I often wondered why. I know this might be off the wall a little bit. Why don't we put the traffic light on their own post? Because we're putting a lot of pressure on our infrastructure to try and maintain. Like, you get 2 stories tall with those lights. That's a huge lift from what's currently there. And I like the light, don't get me wrong, but that was one of the things that jumped out at me right away was the height. And then I thought, you put that pressure on. I'm just saying.
Are you talking
is
about
that,
the street light or the traffic light?
Yeah.
Piece of it?
Yeah, because I think right now we've got, traffic light has that bulb on, plus we've got then
the arm?
the light on it. So
Yeah,
it
I think
wouldn't-
that piece is different than, these are the standalone standards.
So are you putting a different light at the corner then?
Yeah, okay, so there's 2 parts here. Okay, so the street light will go on the existing base along Baker Street. And it was my impression from Dan, the previous hydro manager, that base could accommodate that weight. But I think they will provide some engineering, or we'll get that through the process.
Yeah.
The other ones are the intersection lights, and those are a different issue. You can get all different kinds of ones, one that matches kind of what we have here. Or you can get like an MOTI standard, which is Nelson Hydro is pushing for that. From my understanding, they might have to reinforce the base in either scenario. But I mean, that might be more of a technical question, but it's something we'll definitely have to explore, and Kevin probably knows more about it.
Yeah, I would be, I don't know how to put this, but I'm a real stickler for like doing things for the long term.
Yep, absolutely.
And, if Nelson Hydro has concerns about the capacity of the light to be managed in that situation, I really think we should listen to them and pay attention, because we know from experience that the lights that have taken the most abuse are the ones that are getting hit by the trucks and getting the wind is just rocking them around up and down the streets.
My understanding from Nelson Hydro is the current ones were placed, they did not do any underground infrastructure work when they placed the current heritage lights. So they were put where the electrical currently was in the street, so they didn't have money to upgrade those. When ultimately Baker Street and Victoria, et cetera, gets redone, then they will put proper bases, more of a solid base in, and also probably move it off, being right where it is, because part of it's getting deteriorated because of the salt and stuff, right? So they want to move it back so it's not getting all that wear and tear. They would have never put it where it is. It just was where it was at the time, and they didn't have money to put it elsewhere. So right now, for example, you couldn't, I think I'm right, that you couldn't put the Canterbury lighting on it, for example, because of the bases. That won't happen until phase 2. So these ultimately will be taken off those bases. New bases will be put where they should be, and then you'll be able to do all those other things with these lights. And I think that's part of the reason why they're these ones are high because now you can do that catenary lighting, like the Hall Street Plaza.
I read that here. For
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Yeah,
So this is a long-term light for a temporary base, I guess.
absolutely.
Quick question, but that is the full cost, that with the cost that we're seeing right here?
That's the cost of the light,
That's
not the installation.
No, there's
not the installation, and if we choose to add catenary lighting, that would be an additional cost, but I think that's well down the road. We're just where this light will just accommodate those needs in the future, so.
The ideal world would be redoing Baker Street and doing the lighting at the same time, but where unfortunately these are failing and we have to deal with it before that time.
So could I, just one more question without dragging this out forever then. The Victoria Street ones are the similar, but they're a little newer, right? And would you retain some of the Baker Street ones, like as replacement for Victoria? Should you have, if you had some of them that were of better quality or decent quality, is it something we could use like going forward or not?
Well, it was my impression that that would be possible when I wrote this report, but I just had someone talk to me today from Nelson Hydro, and they don't think the parts are similar enough that they can actually be reused. But as an aside, I know that Joy Bearhart is looking at refurbishing, perhaps maybe using some of our streetlights that we remove, taking them and refurbishing them. So if she is able to do that, potentially we could look at that in the future for Victoria Street if there are any issues. But it doesn't sound like we'll get any spare parts from this, unfortunately, which is too bad. Yeah.
That's probably the right decision anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
It was a lot of work to get to this point.
Wow, yeah. I feel like you've been working overtime.
Thanks, Natalie. Go home. You can go home now.
Have a good night.
Okay, guys, so next on the agenda is a medium-sized list of the various portfolios, and there's minutes and notes from each one of them. I don't know if you picked anything in particular out of any one of those that you thought was worth conversation. It's really important that you take a chance to look through these because not all of us are part of these committees, and it's one of our ways to keep up to date on what's happening. And if there's something you see on there that you think we need to address, these are the times when you should do that. Okay? So hearing none, move receipt, please.
Sorry, I do have a couple of questions about, this is for, Colin? Just going through the payable, report. What are we buying from Amazon?
I think we're on minutes first, right?
Oh,
Sorry.
you might be on the, yeah, you might be,
minutes.
You're
these are
jumping
minutes
ahead.
of committees.
Oh, sorry, we gotta do them, I
just
thought we were
went
doing them all
ahead.
together. I'm sorry.
You're almost like me here, you're jumping
yeah.
ahead, trying to
Sorry,
get going.
sorry.
Yeah, so hang on to that thought though. Anything from there? Do you move receipt then? All in favor? Carried, thanks very much. All right, reports. Might be in here somewhere, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Building permits.
Finance Department, accounts payable.
Purchasing, Finance Department.
Sorry, that one just jumped out at me that,
Yeah.
why are we buying from them?
Well, and again, if you ever have questions like that, when you get your package, it's probably good to email me so I can kind of take a better look.
Oh, okay.
Again, we do, for example, I find that IT, a lot of times, will see like, hey, we're needing a part or we need something, and they'll go on and they'll find it in Amazon and they'll ship it to us that way.
Okay.
So that's one route. But again, I can certainly go and look. But if you're something in particular, it's
Okay,
a bit more
sorry.
helpum for me.
Sorry,
Just to,
it's-
I won't know all of
Am I
these off
throwing
my
you under
head.
the bus here?
No, it's just good. I'm just saying that it'll help me to just.
Okay, because there's a couple others I can.
You
wait.
can take a flyer and I can maybe be able to answer off the top of my head, or I can
Full
get to get back.
skateboard for $2,500.
Well, I believe if it's the company that's doing, I think the work, we're having a refurbish
At
on the youth center.
Youth center?
Yeah.
And school tattoos.
School tattoos.
I would think again, well, no, my opinion will be, and without knowing, and I'll get back to council, is likely again youth center, probably wanting something that is more of that ones that you would wet on, sort of.
Oh,
I'd see a Canada
okay.
sort of idea.
Okay.
But,
wondering if some staff guy's trying to slide his
No,
tattoo through the books, that's
no,
all.
we brand our staff is what we do. No tattoos.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I just noticed as I went through here, you know, the bulk of this, like almost half of it, the total cost is Fortis, so paying for electricity.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a huge component of what the city does here, so.
Yes, they are definitely our single largest expenditure. for
Yes.
But we make a profit on what we buy.
sure. We do.
Yep.
Small, very small profit.
Okay, so somebody want to move receipt of the reports? Moved by Councillor Woodward and second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Action items. There is action happening. All right, so there's your list in front of you. And the list gets longer, but it never gets smaller, does it, Kevin? It gets different.
Yeah, yeah.
The last one's completed as of today on that list,
Right.
so it could be removed, or if you want to keep it there.
Yes.
In perpetuity, you can.
Okay,
Okay.
move receipt of the report. Councillor Morrison, Councillor Page, all in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Anything else? Hearing nothing?
Oh.
No?
Sorry, I wanted to ask something about the action item listings. So we have one thing on the curling club's request for funding.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how much staff time is taken in managing this action item. Because what I understood was we were just going to do a request for funding and then move on. Is it?
We had a further
Is it
leak
gonna do
there, though,
funding?
right?
We haven't met yet. What we will meet with RDCK staff, the curling club, and our staff to talk about the operations side of it.
Yeah.
I think there's some opportunity there to better support that in lieu of the concerns around operating a ice plant that has ammonia in it. So I don't anticipate that being a time-consuming exercise. I'm only one part of that discussion, but I think there's some workable pieces there. The second part, I think the discussion needs to be, initially at that rec center or at the rec commission and talk about, what you want to do around there. I think there's definitely a space there that's available and can be well utilized by the community, and I think that's best placed in the rec commission. They did, do that initial review and so I think there's some work already done, and I know they keep talking about needing more space. I think there's, they can invest in that space and make it into whether it's another fitness class area, daycare space, or a number of things I think they can look at as utilizing that facility, and would be a good place to start for sure.
Okay. So beyond what we just the resolution, there's not a lot of additional staff time. So
No, we're gonna have a meeting, try to sort out the operating side of it, and then I think the rest is really in the rec commission to look at utilization of that facility. And
okay, thank you.
Okay. We're all good?
Yep.
Onward and upward. We're done?
have to go back in camera.
I know.
We have
Yeah,
the,
but we have to move receipt of this.
oh yeah.
Have a good night.
I did.
Oh, you did? Or
Yeah, we already moved second, and then we already
no
did
one's
it, and
talking.
then,
Oh God, see?
yeah, sorry.
So a motion to adjourn the regular meeting? Councillor Woodward and Councillor Anderson, all in favor? Carried. Okay, we still have work to do yet, guys, so everybody wants to just take a stretch, and the media folks, you can leave anytime you want, or you can
That would they